Welcome to the 2025 Michigan Hall of Fame induction ceremony. I'm Vicki Thomas, and I am the communications director for the city of Detroit. Prior to that, I spent 30 years, dating myself, at WWJ and 3 years at WDET prior to that. I'm honored to be your MC for the evening. I would invite you to take your seats so that dinner can be served, and I will be back shortly after dinner to start the program. So enjoy your dinner. All right, how's everybody enjoying dinner? Good, good, good. Let's give our servers a round of applause for taking such good care of us this evening. While you enjoy your dinner, we're going to get the program started. Again, I'm Vicki Thomas, Communications Director for the City of Detroit, and I want to thank you. And I want to once again welcome you to the 2025 Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame induction ceremony. This is, believe it or not, the 40th anniversary. The 40th anniversary. Think about that, 40 years. So let's give all of the organizers who keep this thing going and have kept it going for 40 years a huge round of applause for staying true to the cause. So as you know, this is a huge night for our inductees. And I can definitely relate. It was back in 2019 when I stood on this very stage along with my 6 fellow inductees to be inducted into the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame. It was a proud moment. My dad had come from Chicago. My aunt came from Jacksonville, Florida. I had just a ton of family. I had my DC NABJ family, Detroit NABJ. I had my SAG-AFTRA family, my WWJ family. It's a night that you will not forget if you are an inductee. Here's another thing that's interesting about tonight. Outside of the 40th anniversary, this is the largest number of inductees in the history of the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame. So can our 11, I'll say it again, our 11 inductees please stand so everybody can see you. Yes! So to our inductees, this night, Cynthia, Keith, other inductees, is all about you. It's celebrating you. So sit back, relax, enjoy, take it all in, because it's something you will never, ever forget. And congratulations to all of you. Now, to make this night possible, we want to definitely thank our sponsors, our silver sponsors, Central Michigan University. Give them a round of applause. Our table sponsor, Margaret Trimmer and Damon Hartley. Another table sponsor, Inforum. Our bronze sponsors, Kathleen Lemeko, Ann Masterson, Lorna Utley from UWW. Let's give them all collectively a round of applause. And let's thank the team that really works hard and pulls this all together to make it such a special night. Ashley Conway, Betsy DeSantis, Aaron Dorner, Finn Gormaz, Brad LaPont, Julia Mackey, Barb Miller, Dante Smith, Morgan Voss. Thank you all so much for what you've done to make this night possible. Let's give them a round of applause. And we would also like to acknowledge our committee members. These are the folks, and man, I went over as just preparing as an MC, the 11 nominees that are being inducted tonight, but there were others that had to comb through the applications, and these packets are thick. I mean, it's a lot of information to take in. So they review all of the nominations and then make the final selection. So all of the committee members, if you could stand and let's give them a round of applause. All right, so whenever I MC, I kind of like to set the tone for the evening. So anyone that knows me knows that I work hard. I work really, really hard. I work so hard. But I also play hard too. I love to have a great time, and I think that this would be a great time to just get your buy-in on what this evening will look like. I want it to be special for our inductees, not only for them, but all of you who came to support them and celebrate them tonight. And I mentioned my dad coming from Chicago and I'm from Jacksonville. How many people actually came from out of town to be here? Please stand. Yes, see what I mean? We want to make it worth the trip. So if we could all agree to make this a fun night, an enjoyable night, an unforgettable night. Everybody with me? All right, let's do it. All right. I'm right on time this time. 7 o'clock straight up. Can I have your attention, please? We are going to start the program. Again, if I could thank you. Again, if I could have our inductees take their seats on the dais. You look so pretty. All right. Keith Owens, where is Keith? Dorothy. Patricia. Damon Hartley. Oh, there you are. You snuck up on me.
Long time no see. Long time no see. You too. Thank you.
All right, well, while we wait for the others to take their seats, if you could just please join me in acknowledging our colleagues and friends who passed on. They include my dear friends and mentors, Luther Keith and Al Allen, as well as David Smith and Gene Jennings. And we want to include in that all the journalists from around the world who have been or were covering conflicts and the like to keep us all informed. So if we could just have a moment of silence. Thank you so much. All right, now to the fun part. Are we ready? All right. So our first inductee is Cynthia Canty. Look at Cynthia. She is as cool as a cucumber. And that's how I remember her back in the day. And I've always admired her work on radio and TV. And here's something interesting from Jim McFarland, who nominated Cynthia. He writes, in fact, displaying a powerful dedication to career and family, she is believed to be the first radio newscaster in America ever to work from home. A satellite dish installed on her garage roof so that she can enjoy an extended maternity leave to care for her firstborn, Brendan. And so obviously, you know, as reporters, we love a great story. And so when the news crews got wind of it, they descended on Cindy's house and covered the story, generating headlines coast to coast. So you were ahead of your time. So this is a well-deserved honor for her outstanding career. If you could turn your attention to the screen.
Cynthia Canty had it made. After college, she joined the American Cancer Society and worked her way up to a high-profile position. But she left that life to work the overnight shift, anchoring the news at a small Christian radio station. She served as news director at 3 stations over the next decade before trading her tape recorder for a TV camera.
But the farm crisis of the 1980s soured all of that.
She joined WKBD-TV, covering everything from medical and consumer news to the plight of the homeless. Over the next 12 years, she served as an anchor, editor, and executive producer. Then, she turned off the TV to return to radio, anchoring the news on 2 more morning shows before switching to the dayside shift at Michigan Radio. She spent 7 years on stateside before transitioning to TV one more time.
Very unusual approach to this work in preventing suicide.
Hosting a public television show to help prevent teen suicide. Over the course of her career, Canty has been honored by the Michigan Association of Broadcasters, the Detroit Press Club, the Associated Press, and also earned an Emmy. Tonight, she joins the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, Cynthia Canty.
Please welcome Cynthia Canty to the podium.
Oh my God, Vicki. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Whew. Wow. Here, I'll set this. I'll drop it otherwise. Afraid, but I want to thank you all so much for such a warm response and lovely words and words of support all along. And I want to especially thank dear Jim McFarland for being the very most supportive and generous Hall of Fame mentor that a girl could ever hope for. There is something magical about having a cheerleader, and Jim, you have been for the many decades, you have been that cheerleader, and here we stand. So thank you so much. The word that is thundering through my heart tonight is gratitude. Gratitude for my firefighter dad and homemaker mom, who started reading to me as soon as they brought me home from the adoption agency at age 7 weeks. Parents who had both the Detroit Free Press and Detroit News delivered to our home in Ferndale every single day, who always had books, newspapers, magazines available for a curious girl to read, and local and national TV news on for her to watch every day. And a dad who especially loved to talk history and current affairs with his little girl. Gratitude for the inflection point in my life that pointed me away from my childhood goal of number 1, being a doctor, and number 2, being a nun, and pushed me towards broadcast journalism. Gratitude for my husband, Sean, who did not blink an eye when I upended our lives by accepting my first radio job, which gave us our first taste of a broadcaster's delightful schedule, 1 a.m. to 8 a.m., 6 mornings a week. So thank you, honey, for sticking with me. Great gratitude for every single program director, news director, videographer, and producer who opened a door, hired me, helped me to develop the art of finding and telling stories for television, radio, always under intense deadline. Gratitude for finding myself in the company of the other Hall of Fame inductees in this stellar class of 2025. There is absolutely no way to describe the awe I feel at your bodies of work and at your careers, and I am so honored to be standing here with you. While I was in Florida, being a happy retiree over the last month, I went through and read every single bio on the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame website. People who were cherished colleagues or excellent competitors. People whose reporting I read and watched even as a school kid. And to think that my name will be added to theirs absolutely thrills me to my core. Every single one of us knows that journalism in 2025 is facing enormous challenges and enormous headwinds. I could stand here for an hour, and we all know that I wouldn't get through the worrisome state of affairs today, but we are here to celebrate. And what I want to be grateful for, the journalist warriors who are out there seeking truth and fairness every single day. I know that the curious mind and the desire to ask questions and to find the truth are as strong as ever, and they will prevail. Those journalist warriors will prevail. I know it. And then finally, gratitude for retirement so I can focus on my family, my husband, Sean, our son, Brendan, his wife, Megan, our 4 grandchildren, Liam, Bridget, Rory, and Maeve, and I know they do sound like an Irish folk group, our daughter, Siobhan, and her husband, Samuel. Now, these days, I get to volunteer as a preemie cuddler at the NICU at Trinity Health, Oakland. I get to serve as an election inspector at my local precinct, hoping that my being there to greet voters with a smile just might help a little bit ease some of the national tensions that are particularly centered on our voting process. And after a 53-year pause, I am relearning to play the Highland bagpipes. So it's been 53 years, never too late. Life is good. Thank you, Hall of Fame Committee, for this beautiful day. I am filled with joy. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you so much. No, don't clap.
I'm a fair MC, so I just want to remind our inductees, you have 2 minutes. 2. We got a big clock back here. I have my timer going. I'm not afraid to pull out the hook. But you deserve this moment, so, but please, we have 11 inductees, so please stick to the 2-minute rule. Our next inductee is Alex Cruden, and he has a cheering squad. And talk about a distinguished career. Alex held titles of copy editor, assigning editor, and department head at the Detroit Free Press from 1973. Lord, I was 10 years old in 73. You had it a long time, Alex. All the way to 2008. Julie Topping had this to say about Alex in nominating him. He was, and still is, an exceptional editor and wordsmith, a sought-after mentor, and a reader advocate. It is not hyperbole to say Alex is a legend among copy editors. Alex, you've earned your place in the Hall of Fame.
The Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame is full of print reporters and TV anchors, but we're willing to bet there are few, if any, copy editors. They're often overlooked and underappreciated, but not Alex Cruden. Sure, he's great at grammar and spent 35 years at the Detroit Free Press cleaning up copy, but he did much more than that. He looked at every story with a critical eye and encouraged fellow copy editors to do the same. A wordsmith, a headline-writing genius, and copy editing legend, Cruden didn't keep his talent to himself. He shared his knowledge with co-workers writing the Detroit Free Press style book before retiring in 2008. But his influence went beyond our borders. Cruden hosted 170 workshops and sessions over the years. His festival of copy editing made the topic sexy. And at American Copy Editors Society, his Inside Reader's Heads workshops were often standing room only. He spent a decade as vice president of ACES, which honored him with one of its highest awards. And tonight, we honor him as he joins the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, Alex Cruden.
Step this way, you get a good shot.
Yeah.
The clock starts now.
Three things. First, absolutely, I thank my wife, Deidre, for springing this surprise on me. But from agreeing to move with me in 1973 to join the Detroit Free Press, to this very moment, I couldn't ask for more support, more love, more devotion, and she even rallied, like it seems like a third of the people here to, whether they knew me or not, I don't know, to write wonderful letters and to support the fact that I'm standing here tonight. So thank you, Deidre. And thank you to all of those who did write those letters. Absolutely. Second, I feel I'm here really because I'm representing all of the many, including some here, who work behind the scenes, who do all the other jobs necessary to bring good journalism to people in Michigan and elsewhere. All those people who devote themselves to everything from the smallest correction and inconsistency to the most vital aspects of the news. I have to mention, I'm seeing some wonderful reporters here tonight, but I have to tell you that, in fact, the people behind the scenes are the most read writers of all, because not only do they make all those corrections, they write the headlines. Who doesn't read the headlines? Copy editors, yeah, go. You go. Third, I'd just like to say, well, actually, I should mention that just to make sure you all know, behind the scenes doesn't mean just behind newspaper scenes. It means behind the scenes that create what's on any screen of any size, of any import that anybody looks at. That's behind the scenes work, and in news, that's behind the scenes journalism, and it really should be honored. So I'm happy to be here in that regard. Third, I still believe in the values that copy editors uphold, and I'm still excited about them. After all these years, of 41 years, I've actually been in daily journalism, and another 17 after that, I've been doing editing for non-journalistic clients, but it's still the same principles. Some of you will be happy to know that I'm actually nicer to them now. Yeah, gotcha. Age does help in some ways. The values really come down to, I think, another threesome. Accuracy, clarity, fairness. Of all of the times that I spent in newsrooms and outside among people interested in news, the many, many seminars I've done, all the listening I've tried to do, it still comes to what we can do is keep with those values, if we're in journalism, the values of accuracy, clarity, and fairness. They're good for us, they're good for the world. Thank you.
One hell of a photojournalist is how I would describe our next inductee, the late, great Kurtman Dozier. In nominating him, Kathy Kaliszewski wrote, say it again? Okay. Kathy K. All right, Kathy K. Kathy's right here. Kurtman F. Dozier is a perfect candidate for induction into the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame. His recent passing in January 2024 left an irreplaceable void in Michigan's journalism community. But his legacy as one of the state's most accomplished photojournalists continues to inspire. And certainly, he was one of the best sports journalists, photojournalists around, and his legacy will definitely live on.
There have been many legends in Michigan's sports history. Barry Sanders, Isaiah Thomas, Tom Izzo, Steve Yzerman, and they all have one thing in common. Their careers have been chronicled by another legend, Kurtman Dozier. It's not just coaches and players. Kurt recorded memorable moments as Michigan teams made history. The Pistons championships, the Red Wings winning the Stanley Cup in the 90s, Miggy's last game in 2023. But his camera didn't just chronicle sports. Over a career that spanned more than 40 years, 37 of those at the Detroit News and Free Press, he also shot major news events, including the release of Nelson Mandela and the funeral of Aretha Franklin. But this isn't just about honoring Kurt's pictures. It's paying tribute to the man. Kurt was known, respected, and loved by friends, co-workers, and competitors alike. And while he left us all too soon last year, his pictures and his legacy will live on in our hearts, our minds, and now as a member of the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame.
And his son, Kurt Jr., is here to accept the award, and he's been telling me about some of the great things that he's doing, so your dad would be proud.
Thank you. Get my phone. How's everybody doing today? First off, I want to thank everyone responsible for my dad being considered for this amazing accomplishment. My dad is originally from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and grew up mainly in Seattle, Washington, where he started his career in journalism. For him to be recognized in Michigan as a Hall of Fame journalist, I'm sure was his dream at one point in his early career. Growing up, people would always say, "Man, your dad has a dream job." It always went over my head what people meant by that, and I unknowingly agree with them. To me, he was just going to work because that's how he treated it. My dad was always serious about his work. If you went with him to the game, you better keep up. I never understood how he would move so fast carrying all that equipment from his car to the stadium or whatever story he had to cover. He always made sure he was on time. Maybe that's why I felt like he was speed walking from his car to those assignments. Oftentimes, he was the only black photographer or journalist covering the assignment. Walking into media rooms felt awkward as a kid at times, but there will always be someone there who broke the ice with him, often greeting him with a, "Hey, Dozier." Then there always came the corny joke of how I must have got my good looks from my mom instead of him, I never knew the history of being an African-American photojournalist until the passing of one of my dad's mentors, Hugh Graham. I attended the funeral with my dad, and as people spoke about Mr. Graham's career, I then realized that people like Hugh, my father, and others were some of the first black photographers to ever work at their respective news outlets. I was 19 when I realized that and gained more respect for my dad and many others like him. The past year, I learned so much about my father that he didn't speak about. I also realized how important his work was as it told stories about our American history. I began to look at his pictures differently. There was always this one picture that he took hanging in his houses that I was always completely uneducated about. I always viewed it as just a picture of an old man marching, walking down the street. As a kid, I unknowingly thought that it was Martin Luther King Jr. It wasn't until I was creating my dad's obituary that I realized that old man in that picture was Nelson Mandela. That picture hit different because I just had the opportunity to help kids in South Africa through my nonprofit organization. I took that as a sign to move forward with the plan. I recently spent 2 months in Cape Town following my dreams like my dad did when he chose to leave Seattle for Detroit. While there, I had to document everything: pictures, videos, interviews, editing, the whole process that he did countless times at work. Never in my life did I have an interest of being a photographer. I never picked up a camera outside of going to work with him. But this trip, the camera was glued to my hand. I even had to edit, which vaguely came to memory from when my dad taught me during his Pistons playoff runs in Cleveland during Rasheed's guarantee. The first time I really cried since my dad passed was on the plane back from Africa just last night. I had to remind myself that God doesn't make any mistakes, and even the lowest points in my life were meant to make me higher. I want to thank the entire Free Press family for your continued support for my sister and I, the Detroit News, who gave my dad his first opportunity in a big city, and to all the sports franchises and universities that honored my dad this past year. And congratulations to all the other nominees for this prestigious award. Thank you.
You did a great job, Junior. Because people got tears in their eyes. That's a dynamic speaker, by the way, when you can move people to tears. Our next inductee is John Flesher, a standout environmental reporter and so much more. In her nomination statement, Julia Mackey wrote, "He elevated the quality of environmental journalism in the state and the Great Lakes region. Government officials, advocacy groups, and scientists credited his reporting with influencing public perceptions and policy decisions on matters as varied as the gray wolf's resurgence, Great Lakes cleanups funding, and wetlands protection. This is a well-deserved honor for John."
It took John Flesher 8 years to start covering Michigan, but it was worth the wait. He started his career with the Associated Press covering North Carolina. Then Flesher moved to Washington to serve as Michigan's capital correspondent. 3 years later, he continued his coverage from the Great Lakes state itself. But rather than live in Detroit or Lansing, Flesher set up shop in Traverse City. And instead of crime and corruption, he covered climate change before it was cool. Flesher focused on our wildlife and waterways, covering everything from the Great Lakes to the Gray Wolf, as well as the Enbridge oil spill. He crossed state lines as part of the AP's Global Environment team to cover other disasters, including the Deepwater Horizon and the train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. Among his many honors, Flesher was named AP Staffer of the Year and earned 11 fellowships at the Institute for Journalism and Natural Resources, which later invited him to join their board. And though he retired in 2023, his honors continue with his induction into the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, John Flesher.
Welcome, John, to the podium. Here you go, young man.
I feel young, thank you. My deepest gratitude to my wonderful wife, Sharon, our children, Dylan and Leah, who couldn't be here tonight, the Hall of Fame Committee, Michigan State University School of Journalism, my friend and Associated Press teammate and fellow Hall member, Kathy Hoffman, for nominating me, and the many other family members, friends, and journalistic colleagues who supported me over the years, some of whom are here tonight. Thank you all very, very much. I also feel compelled to thank the state of Michigan itself. its people, and its woods and waters and wildlife and those wondrous Great Lakes. For accepting this son of the South as a naturalized Michigander, for opening themselves to me and telling me their stories. What a privilege to have had a career as a seeker and teller of true stories, a profession that I believed in and was proud of from the first day to the last. Those of us entering the Hall of Fame this year represent different types of media and a wide range of work experiences. But one thing we have in common is we've been around a long time, long enough to remember when receiving an honor like this would require nothing more of us than to take a bow, tell a few war stories, and ride off into the sunset. But sadly, that time is gone. Who could have imagined that 234 years after the ratification of the Bill of Rights, we would have cause to fear for the survival of that precious right to report the news without interference, harassment, and retaliation from the highest echelons of our government, here in the United States of America. Yet that's where we are in the year 2025. The Trump administration's assault on democracy in general, and the First Amendment in particular, is so unprecedented in its scope and brazenness that the media itself seems uncertain about how to respond. Well, my news organization, the Associated Press, has courageously stood its ground. And never, in more than 40 years, have I been prouder to be a career AP journalist than I am right now. I believe that induction into the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame carries a profound responsibility. We must use whatever platforms we have to defend freedom of expression, to support our colleagues who are fighting the good fight in the face of financial hardship, as well as unfounded, unpatriotic, and un-American attacks. That responsibility applies equally to all citizens, regardless of political orientation, who truly believe in our Constitution and the liberties that it promises. Previous generations sacrificed greatly to preserve such ideals. Now it's up to us. Thank you.
And thank you, John, for that sobering assessment. And I haven't even had a drink tonight. Our next inductee is Cindy Goodacre. I just love her name, Cindy Goodacre. In nominating Cindy, Hall of Famer Mary Kramer writes, for her impact in delivering valuable news and insights to Crane readers, making business coverage competitive in this market, and for shaping at least 2 generations of reporters in Metro Detroit. Cindy deserves to be recognized in the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame, and congratulations, Cindy, on this well-deserved honor.
The news is almost literally in Cindy Goodacre's blood. Her father was a newspaper photographer in Indiana, and she followed in his footsteps. Goodacre rose from reporter to editor-in-chief of the Purdue student paper before moving to Michigan. After 7 years at Oakland Press, she went from a daily to a weekly. Freed from the shackles of daily reporting at Crane's Detroit Business, Goodacre regularly scooped her old friends. As assistant editor, she oversaw coverage of real estate, manufacturing, and healthcare before getting promoted. As editor, she took the weekly to new heights. The University of Missouri named Crain's the best business paper in America twice and best website 3 times. Goodacre helped Crain's achieve excellence by pushing the staff to be the best they could be. She retired from Crain's after 30 years, but continued to advocate for journalism and journalists by serving on the boards of the student publications of the University of Michigan and the Center for Michigan. In her new career, she continues to advocate for women in the workplace today. Ladies and gentlemen, Cindy Goodacre.
Good evening. I'm so honored to be here. This is an unexpected bookend to a 38-year journalism career. Thank you, Tom Henderson, for getting the ball rolling on this. I became a journalist because my father, Don Goodacre, was a newspaper photographer. I spent time in newsrooms when wire service machines were clanking and a child could bang away on manual Underwood typewriters. There was an aura of excitement and purpose. I wanted to become a photographer like Dad, so I assembled a portfolio of pictures for a 4-H contest. Dad looked at them carefully, told me which ones he thought I should submit, and then said, "You know, you're a very good writer." And so I changed course. I'm here tonight because I'm credited with helping reporters build skills and careers. I think of it as paying it forward because so many people helped me. As a Dow Jones Newspaper Fund intern at the AP in New York, I experienced the Summer of Sam and the Metro-wide blackout. There I earned my first professional page 1 byline for a roundup about mass murders that was picked up by the Fairbanks, Alaska Daily News Miner. My teachers there included Desk Chief Bill Ahern and fellow intern Jerry Schwartz, both of whom forged long, storied careers with the AP. At the Oakland Press, Sue Belniak Hood, Sue Sidak, Dolly Moiseff, Joe Grimm, Tom Walsh, Larry Lorraine, and Neil Monroe taught me how to cover a beat and how to be a better writer and reporter, and just in general gave me a wide range of opportunities. I joined Crain's 9 months after it's launched and learned from Peter Brown, Matt Greisen, Betty Lou Kitzman, and Dave Guilford. Each of them was a walking encyclopedia of things I did not know, and they were generous in teaching me. Mary Kramer arrived in 1989, and without Mary, I would not be here tonight. My children were small then, and I would not have aspired to become executive editor without her prodding and encouragement. I also learned from Phil Nussel, who I hired as managing editor in 1995. Phil's sense of people and his ability to identify rising talent was and is a superpower. Jeanette Smith-Catilla, Nancy Hannes, Mike Lee, and Bob Allen are among the many others who have talents I do not and made me and Crain's better. I mention these names and wish I could mention more because journalism is a team effort, people working together to serve audiences with a commitment to take stories where the facts lead in service of our communities, our state, our nation, and our world. I'm proud to still support journalism as a board director of the Center for Michigan. Phil Power, like Keith Crain, is a visionary who saw possibilities where others did not and had the business plan to make them a reality. Most meaningful to me this evening is sharing this recognition with 4 generations of family. My grandkids are too young for this event, but the other 3 generations are here. My children, Aaron and Emily Reese, my daughter-in-law, Nikki Alexopoulos Reese, my sister, Donna Goodacre, her partner, Michael McSturdy, and my mother, Pat Goodacre. And they're all happy to be here tonight, but I know for sure that no one, including me, would be happier about this than my father. So this one's for you, Dad. Thank you.
Wow, what can I say about Damon Hartley? I've always loved running into Damon when I was covering the city beat for WWJ, and obviously his photography is remarkable and outstanding. And you know what? He was always such a gentleman, too. In nominating Damon, my good friend Margaret Trimmer writes, he was faithfully and fiercely, or he has faithfully and fiercely covered the news without fear or favor throughout his career as a photojournalist, most notably at the Detroit Free Press. In pursuit of telling the stories of underserved, marginalized, and oppressed people, Damon has consistently put himself in the center of the action and frequently the danger to capture images from the streets of Detroit and the neighborhoods of Ferguson, Missouri, to war zones in Central America and the Middle East. He donned a bulletproof vest, packed a gas mask, and often defied authorities when they tried to redirect him or restrict his access. Sounds like you have definitely earned your spot in the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame. Damon.
Damon Hartley fought for justice, but he didn't do it with a gun or a pen. He did it with his camera. His pursuit of justice took him from Detroit, Michigan to Ferguson, Missouri, and from Central America to the Middle East. Hartley started as a stringer in Detroit for UPI in the 80s. His knack for being first on the scene put him at the Buell Building fire in 1982. His photos made him a Pulitzer finalist and helped get him his job at the Free Press. And as part of a team that covered Nelson Mandela's visit to Detroit in 1990, he earned another Pulitzer nomination in 1991. He used his connections to get photos no one else could and won numerous awards from the AP, UPI, Detroit Press Club, and the Michigan Press Photographers Association, which named him Photographer of the Year in 1990. But it's not just about awards. He hosted workshops at community centers, high schools, and colleges, creating the next generation of photographers, and helped others make the transition to digital photography. Tonight, he joins the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, Damon Hartley.
Congratulations.
Well, I have a speech, and I'm going to try to read it and then look at the crowd, read it, look at the crowd. But I don't have the training that somebody like a Vicki Thomas has or some of our other cohorts. Good evening, family, friends, colleagues, and comrades. I am grateful and I am humbled to be inducted into the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame. Tonight, as a high school dropout who grew up poor and angry, I never dreamed I'd experience recognition like this. I wish my mom and dad could see me now. This is what I was afraid of. I'll get through it if you let me. Thanks. To stand among my fellow inductees tonight is an honor. A lot of thank yous are in order, especially to my family. To Margaret, my nominator, my wife, my partner, and our family's bedrock for almost 35 years. To my daughters, Karina, Nicole, Robin, and to my son, Nick. To MSU student extraordinary, Wally Kahn, for his video work on my behalf and working with editing on this speech. To George Waldman, who coaxed me into being nominated, and others who wrote letters and who remembered our work together. Your words sit with me. To the General Baker Institute folks who are here, and a special recognition to Marion Kramer, who has been my friend and comrade in the struggle for social justice for over 50 years. I am also honored to have some of the courageous MSU students who led the local Palestinian encampment here tonight. And a shout out to the 19 MSU students and supporters who were arrested on Thursday, bringing attention to the ongoing genocide in Palestine. I am in awe of your sacrifice and your example. I could take these few minutes I have to talk only about my career, the stories, the people. It has been half a century of bearing witness to human struggle and human triumph. But I didn't go there without first taking a moment to reflect on those who have bore witness and never made it home. The Bible says the truth shall set you free. Today, more and more, the truth will get you killed. According to the Committee to Protect Journalists, 2024 was the deadliest year for our profession since they began counting. Much of that is because of what is happening in Gaza and the West Bank. More journalists have died covering the genocide there than anywhere else in the world. More than 200 journalists, most of them Palestinians, erased by Israeli bombs and bullets supplied by the United States and paid for with our tax dollars. And more than 50,000 Palestinians murdered, 70% of them women and children. It continues as I stand here tonight. The Palestinian people are near and dear to me. I remember covering the first Intifada there for the Detroit Free Press in the late 80s. I remember what it felt like when I realized that the truth I was seeing on the ground in the occupied territories of the West Bank and Gaza Strip was not the story that was being told back home. And I remember being ordered to return home for capturing exactly what I saw. It was scary. It tested my understanding of and belief in our profession. But I never thought I would die because of the photos I took. Photos the paper ultimately stood behind and published. Things have changed. And yet I am hopeful because so many journalists, especially young journalists, still run toward the story, wherever it is. They still raise their cameras and their phones, still press record, and still write what must be written. They have no guns, no battalions, no nation behind them, only an independent spirit and a moral compass that drive them to show and tell. They are as courageous as any soldier on the battlefield. Regardless of what we were taught and how hard we try to practice objectivity, I can't imagine any of us really believe that journalism in these times is neutral. How can we be neutral and objective when some things are just flat out wrong? Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who I was honored to photograph and spend time with, famously said, "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor." And speaking of oppressors, you know I wouldn't be true to myself or the ideal of a free press if I didn't take some political license tonight. Italian dictator Benito Mussolini defined fascism as the merger of the corporations with the state. Fascism comes to power to protect end-stage capitalism. Sound familiar? A few years ago, our own government, through Citizens United, declared that corporations are persons. And Trump has taken it to a whole new level by building a cultural movement around the MAGA brand of fascism, powered by his propaganda and machines X, Truth Social, and Fox News. I don't have much more to go.
Damon, that's 3 pages.
Does the audience allow me to continue? Thank you. Hey, massive speak. The most influential press social media today are either government or corporate owned and controlled. The only thing that can turn the tide away from fascism now is the people. And the only ones who can give voice, visibility, and validity to the people are independent-minded journalists. I am particularly focused on our youth, and I would encourage you to be as well. They're ready to build the world they want to live in, and they bring incredible energy, drive, and optimism to that work. I have so much faith in them because if you study history, students and young people have always been on the right side. The civil rights movement, opposition to the Vietnam War, apartheid in South Africa, and more recently, the Occupy Wall Street movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, the Bernie Sanders movement, and the anti-genocide pro-Palestinian encampments at 117 colleges and universities last year. Young people are on the front lines demanding an end to the destruction of our planet, the slaughter of Palestinians, and the suffocating fascism of Trump and Musk and the billionaires who see this nation and really the whole world as a playground for their plunder. Listen to their chants, read their picket signs, learn from their traumas, and tell them their stories. You will see a revolutionary narrative emerging for humanity, a narrative in which every person will be allowed to be who they are, love whom they wish, have the necessaries of life, and not live in constant fear of violence, war, and suffering. Last paragraph. As I have for the last 50 years, I plan to spend the rest of my days making sure their efforts are seen and heard above the noise and chaos of the powerful. I implore you to do the same. Thank you, and thank you for your patience. And thank you. Good job, Dan. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, I wasn't going to touch that one. All right. Our next inductee is Dorothy Meisner Journey. A true trailblazer in bringing women's issues to the forefront. In his nomination statement, Tim Kiska wrote, as editor of the Detroit Free Press's For and About Women section between 1959 and 1973, Journey was the architect of one of the most significant changes of her era, revamping sections that for decades had covered the 4 F's. We know what they are: food, family, furnishings, and fashion, in vibrant lifestyle sections that covered as hard-hitting topics on the city desk. Dorothy has earned her place in the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame, and to speak for Dorothy and accept the trophy, we have Laura Oliveto.
Born in 1909, Dorothy Meisner Journey has a long line of descendants, but we honor her tonight as the godmother of the women's page. Before Meisner Journey, women's sections focused on food, family, furnishings, and fashion. After Meisner Journey, they never looked the same. Armed with a journalism degree from Northwestern, she rose to acting city editor at the Washington Daily News during World War II, but she lost that job when men returned from the front. Meisner Journey journeyed to Florida, serving as assistant women's editor at the Miami News, then women's editor at the Herald. That's where she reinvented the section with hard-hitting, in-depth news, and where she won the Florida Press Club's Award for Excellence in Women's News 6 times. In 1959, she brought the format to the Detroit Free Press. That's where the women's section covered everything from birth control and homosexuality to women in engineering and politics, and where Meisner Journey rose from women's editor to assistant managing editor. She died in 2002, but her legacy lives on in newspapers across the country, the journalists she led, and the readers who benefit from her influence on the industry.
Thank you and good evening. AWC Detroit, formerly known as Women in Communications of Detroit, is pleased to celebrate the induction of former member and 1973 national headliner Dorothy Meisner Journey into the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame. Although she was a native of our neighbor Indiana, it's only right that Dorothy's contributions be recognized here, where her work in Detroit blazed the path for the transformation of women's pages in newspapers here and throughout the country. Dorothy embodies everything AWC Detroit represents, as our vision includes the advancement of literacy, as well as a staunch support for women's causes and communications careers. And she certainly exemplified important Hall of Fame criteria as well: courage, integrity, and leadership. While Dorothy Journey still would be considered innovative and courageous today, her accomplishments were absolutely extraordinary, given the fact that she rose to prominence in the 1930s and 40s in what was a very male-dominated field, and she was revered by her peers, both male and female. A Detroit Free Press editor and influential transformative editor in the Knight Ridder chain, she pioneered the change of women's pages from, as we heard, food, fashion, etc., to lifestyle sections with hard-hitting topics. The years Dorothy Journey spent in Detroit were exciting ones for women. Her section reported extensively on the women's movement and on political, social, and economic gains made by women. Journey and her staff also covered local stories that helped establish the women's section as a vital part of the Detroit community. One groundbreaking story during Journey's time at the Free Press covered the Detroit public school system's efforts to address the issue of homosexuality during the 1960s, when the subject was most definitely taboo. Such stories define the paper's women's pages as a news section. In her book, Reevaluating Women's Page Journalism in the Post-World War II era, Kimberly Wilmot Voss called Journey likely the most influential of all women's page editors. And in We Are Our Mother's Daughters, Cokie Roberts wrote that Journey and her contemporaries used the women's pages to underline women's problems. I'll skip the next paragraph and just say, I wish I had had the chance to know Dorothy. While she passed away in 2002, if she could be with us now, 2 decades later, it would be fun to get her take on journalism today. And I'm sure she would have had some carefully crafted insights for us, and I'm sure she'd be extremely humble and honored to accept this beautiful tribute to her marvelous career and her significant journalistic contributions. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, this next one is really special to me. And the third time is the charm. The great late Hall of Famer Luther Keith nominated Keith Owens 3 times. And finally, Keith is being inducted tonight. And I know while we all wish that Luther were here to share in the celebration of his good friend, but I also know that he's smiling down on us from heaven and saying, job well done. In his nomination statement, Luther writes, I believe that Keith Owens meets the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame standard in the areas of achievement, contributions, integrity, and influence on others. His work has shined at every stop along the way in his career, but especially here in Michigan, where he has worked at mid and larger sized mainstream publications such as the Ann Arbor News and the Detroit Free Press, to smaller weekly publications such as the African American owned Michigan Chronicle and Michigan Front Page, and the alternative weekly Detroit Metro Times. Congratulations, Keith, and I'm so honored to be here tonight to share in this amazing moment, and Luther would be definitely proud of both of us.
When a young Keith Owens interviewed for a prestigious journalism training program, they asked what he'd do if he was rejected. He said he'd succeed anyway. We'll never know, since they did select him. But there's no doubt about his success. Owens worked as a reporter, editor, and columnist at numerous publications since 1986, including mainstream publications like the Ann Arbor News and Detroit Free Press. African American-owned papers like the Michigan Chronicle and the Michigan Front Page, and alternative outlets like the Detroit Metro Times. Owens wrote about everything from race relations and poverty to music and culture. He joined his colleagues on the picket lines following the 1995 newspaper strike, and with his byline when they formed the Detroit Sunday Journal, even though it cost him his syndicated column. He also defended diversity, founding the Mid-Michigan Association of Black Journalists for people at papers outside Detroit, and supported student journalists as a mentor. He has been honored by the Detroit chapter of the SPJ and the National Newspaper Publishers Association. And tonight, he joins the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, Keith Owens.
Congratulations.
Good evening. Like Cynthia Candy, for me, this is also about gratitude because I didn't get here by myself. So I first want to thank the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame for this incredible honor. This is without a doubt the high point of my career. While we don't do this for the awards, this is truly something special, so thank you. Next, I want to give a special thanks to those friends, family members, and colleagues who have supported me along my nearly 40-year journey in this business, because it was friends, family, and colleagues who made it possible for me to be here tonight. First, my wife, Pamela Hilliard Owens, who married me 27 years ago while I was on strike from the Detroit Free Press, and without whom I'm not quite sure how I would have made it through some of those tougher times that followed. No one could ask for a better wife, a better friend, a better support. She is a brilliant writer and creative in her own right who keeps me on track. I simply don't have enough words, so I should probably stop there except to say that I love you. My friend and colleague, Andre Smith, who was going to make it tonight, was unable to make it, unfortunately. But I wanted to mention him because Andre and I worked together during both of my stints as editor at the Michigan Chronicle. It was Andre who told me what I needed to do to get us the press credentials that got us onto the press motorcade when President Barack Obama visited Flint nearly a decade ago in response to the polluted water crisis that still haunts that community today. For a small community paper like the Chronicle, Michigan's oldest black newspaper, you need to understand that this was a really big deal. Gaining access to presidential motorcades just doesn't happen for the Michigan Chronicle, and really not for the black press, period. But it happened that day, and it wouldn't have happened without Andre. Also, my longtime and close friend, William Hampton, who is here tonight, who I met while reporting my very first Michigan story when I was a cub reporter for the Ann Arbor News nearly 40 years ago. It's not always easy making friends who aren't journalists when you're in a new city, but William and his wife, Esther, took me in and gave me a home. I also have to thank Detroit Free Press opinion page editor Nancy Kaffer for reaching out and giving me the opportunity to once again express myself on the Free Press editorial page after a nearly 30-year absence. You're one of the best editors I've ever worked with, and you're also a good friend. Thank you. And of course, W. Kim Herron and Larry Gabriel, my fellow strikers and Free Press brothers who helped me shape my voice with the Metro Times after the strike pulled me away from the Free. They kept my Detroit voice alive when there were no other options, and for that I'm eternally grateful. My parents, Sebastian Cabot Owens and Geneva McNamee Owens, both of whom have passed away. Same as with Pam, even though words are what I do, there simply aren't enough words for me to express how much I love them both for all that they gave me as a child growing up. It was their belief in me that allowed me to believe in myself. I only wish they could have lived to see this night as I take my place where they always told me that I belonged. And finally, Luther Keith. Luther remains the youngest person ever to be inducted into the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame. He was the founder of Arise Detroit. He was the bad man of the blues. He was a beacon of light. Just being around him would lift you up. Luther was also one of my closest friends going back more than 40 years. It was Luther who nominated me for this honor, and he nominated me 3 times in a row because he believed that I belonged here tonight. When he got the word that I was being inducted, he threw a celebration party for me at Baker's Keyboard Lounge in Detroit, where we had a ball. I had been a member of his blues band some years ago, and this was the first time we were reunited on stage after quite a while. At the end of the night, he said it was the best performance of his life. The next morning, Luther died in his sleep. Luther's brother Terrence and his daughter Erin are here tonight, and I'm so grateful that you're here. Luther was the best of us, and I will miss him forever. I know how much he was looking forward to being here tonight, and I believe he is here, because Luther would not have missed this. I'd like to end my remarks how I began. Tonight is a night to be thankful. For me, this award is as much about those who helped me get here as it is about me being here myself. It's all about gratitude. Thank you.
And I just want to add to that, one of my last conversations with Luther, he mentioned that we were the only student, advisor, or teacher combo inducted into the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame because he was my counselor in college. So I just love Luther. We're missing him, and God rest his soul. Our next inductee is Patricia Ann Rencher, another trailblazing journalist. Detroit NABJ member Alicia Nails writes in her nomination statement, in founding, publishing, and operating Urban Aging News, Patricia Ann Rencher stands in the grand and respected tradition of the urban press giants who have served their communities in this noble role. She is a servant leader whose solution-focused service stories have improved the lives of older adults in Metro Detroit and of the countless loved ones and professionals who provide them care. Pat Rencher, congratulations and welcome to the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame. Well deserved.
Almost all of us get old, but no matter who we're surrounded by or what kind of life we have lived, there's always one person in our corner, Patricia Rencher. As founder and publisher of Urban Aging News, Rencher tells us what we need to know as we get older. Her publication prepares us for everything from ageism and Alzheimer's to Social Security and Medicare. But Urban Aging News isn't just about instructions, it's a solutions-oriented resource guide that highlights activities to help people avoid social isolation. Her advice isn't limited to people of a certain age. Urban Aging News also serves as a resource for friends, families, and caretakers, and it almost didn't happen. When she couldn't get support to launch the project, despite her master's degree in journalism and graduate certificate in gerontology, she started it on her own. Since then, she has gotten support from foundations who believe in her mission and want to see her succeed. Her honors from various groups include the Detroit Area on Aging's Lifelong Achievement Award. And tonight, she joins the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, Patricia Rencher.
Good evening. It brings tears to my eyes, my goodness. So I'll read this speech. Thank you to the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame committee for this incredible recognition. It's both an honor and a privilege to be recognized among Michigan's talented communicators. Congratulations, fellow inductees. There are only 4 kinds of people in this world, according to former First Lady Rosalynn Carter: those who have been caregivers, those who are caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers. I was a caregiver. In fact, I met the textbook profile of a family caregiver, a 50-year-old working daughter. It began with Mom, who experienced a cycle of in and out of the hospital, emergency rooms, short-term rehab, you know the drill. 5 years in, Dad began to decline cognitively and physically, and he was able to stay in the family home. Mom, however, had to live in a nursing home. And throughout this 10-year caregiving journey, I navigated caring for parents in our country's complex long-term care system, one institutionally and the other who was attempting to age in place. The more I read and researched, the more I discovered I needed to know. The more fragmented I came to understand the system is, as well as how disorganized and inaccessible sources of information were. There was no single, reliable, hyperlocal source that would educate me and the many adult children that I met along the way on meeting the challenges of aging in Metro Detroit. I realized that the journalism skills I had acquired through a 20th century degree and had used to write grant proposals in the nonprofit sector and to work at the Institute of Gerontology might be useful in making caregiving less burdensome to families. So in 2015, I launched Urban Aging News, a quarterly, online, and print publication that has grown to serve 60,000 older, mostly African-American adults in Metro Detroit. Thank you. My older readers especially love the print edition. They pick it up, They save it, they pass it on. Print journalism is not dead. The purpose of Urban Aging News initially was to aid families caring for their older loved ones and to make it less mysterious and less burdensome by connecting them to vetted resources, programs, services, and tools. Over time, the paper has evolved into a resource to address overall aging challenges, as well as to provide some proactive tools and advice to make aging less difficult. And I have been able to do so through the contributions of veteran journalists, mid-career journalists, and journalism students who I provided opportunities to explore aging as an area of concentration. Members of the Aging Services Network are equally significant as they provide content inspiration and the very necessary financial support. Thank you. I also want to thank my small but mighty team. I kissed a lot of frogs before I found editor extraordinaire Alicia Monique Nails. She's the director of the Wayne State Journalism Institute for Media Diversity, and I thank her for her constructive feedback, her honesty, her humor, her talent, and largely her commitment to Urban Aging News. I will forever be grateful for her bringing journalistic standards and journalistic integrity to the paper. I thank my graphic designer, and much thanks to my delivery driver who delivers print papers to over 200 sites in a week's time. I'm almost done. To my loyal supporters who are with me tonight, tables 22 and 23. All right. I want you to know that each of you have played a significant role in the paper's survival. You held me up when I was weak and wanted to quit. You offered story ideas and kind and consistent encouragement, and unknowingly, you each reminded me why I took on this monumental task. I thank you, and I share this honor tonight with you. And finally, I thank my readers. I've often said that I was out here practicing social work without a license because the readers would call and ask for follow-up information on a story we would cover or a story that we had not covered. I'd research the issue, call the reader back with the information, and cover the issue in subsequent issues. The little old lady readers were so grateful and thanked me profusely. I respectfully offered a warm, "You're welcome, ma'am." I'd hang up the phone, and then I'd stomp my foot and said, "Dang, I gotta keep doing this." And I have. Thank you. Thank you.
Next, we have inductee Jam Sardar, an award-winning journalist, and his nomination statement reads, Jam wasn't one to enter his work for many awards, but the one that he did enter actually won, and it was for his coverage of the Michigan State Final Four riot in 1999. When the violence broke out, he spent much of the night in the field and the rest atop a live truck across the street from the huge fire on Grand River Avenue, breaking into programming until 2 in the morning. Then he went back to the station, put his package together for the morning show, and still stinking of tear gas, went out the next morning to cover the cleanup and response. Congratulations, Jam. You have definitely earned your spot in the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame.
Journalism is all Jam Sardar has ever wanted to do, and it's practically all he's ever done. After 2 degrees and his first job in TV news, Jam became a reporter in Lansing. He broke a story on his very first day and broke many others over the next 3 years.
There's still a huge fire.
Also winning an award for his live coverage of the 1999 riots at MSU. After 4 years at Wood TV in Grand Rapids and 2 in Philadelphia, Jam returned to Michigan and moved into management, eventually becoming news director at WLNS TV, where he took the station from number 2 to number 1. He did it by mentoring young journalists. He did it by serving the community, hosting everything from gun lock giveaways to drug drop-offs. He did it with excellence, winning 12 regional Murrows in 12 years. He did it with innovation, taking deep dives into important issues facing the community. And he did it with diversity, giving women and people of color high-profile positions.
Well, we're not telling anybody what to do, Bill.
He also defended diversity as a former Michigan president and national vice president of the Asian American Journalists Association. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jam Sardar.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Vicki. And I promise my speech is exactly 2.5 minutes, but might
Two
run
and a
longer.
half. No,
Might run longer because of the laughter.
Okay, okay.
All right, laughter breaks, very important. Good evening, everyone. I am so honored to be here tonight. This is an unusual event for me. Usually, when I come to something like this, it is to honor Sherry Jones. Sherry Jones right there. Sherry is already a Hall of Famer, and in case you don't know, she is retiring on May 9th after 36 years with WLNS TV. So congratulations to Sherry. And those of you who know her know that you could not ask for a better friend or coworker. I would also like to thank the Hall of Fame Selection Committee and my 9 warm-up acts. I'm kidding, of course. Actually, I want to apologize to them. I am the guy who wrote the scripts for all of these videos here that you've seen tonight, and all of their accomplishments, it's almost impossible to sum up into 180 words. Everything that they have done and everything that they've achieved. So congratulations to the class of 25. If you like the videos, then you're welcome. If you don't like the videos, Dave Parks edited them, and he's sitting right there. And in fact, I just wanted to let you know I am the warm-up act tonight for David Seaman. I used to be on the Hall of Fame selection committee, so I know a lot about the people who are already in here, and I dreamed that one day I would become a member of it myself. So I'm so very grateful to be here and in the company of so many legends and people that I admire, and that includes Sherry, that includes Tim Skubick, that includes legends like Diana Lewis and Helen Thomas. It includes my friends like Joe Grimm. Joe, where's Joe? I saw him earlier. Yep, and Jane Briggs Bunting. I've been to enough of these banquets to know that there are basically 2 kinds of speeches. One is the kind that inspires, and that's why I will never forget Jane's speech when she was inducted in 2003. She just kind of blew the roof off the place. That was my very first year. And it's the kind of speech that I told myself that I would give if I ever got to this podium. Not the other kind of speech where you spend these precious few minutes thanking people that most of you have never heard of, and who the crowd doesn't know. It's who the crowd doesn't know, right, Alex? Not that. I could use a copy editor here. But as I've grown, grown older and wiser, I've come to appreciate how important it is to acknowledge the people who made it all possible, who turned your ideas into stories, who brought your vision to life, and who helped raise your children. And that seems like a good place to start, not just with my wife, Archana, who is busy recording my speech there, but with her parents, who are here tonight and who literally live right next door. Thanks, of course, to my children. Anjali is here. She drove 4 hours from college to be here tonight. And my son, Aryan, who has been so patient sitting through all these speeches. I could not ask for a better Pokemon partner in crime. Although I'm sure you all know how families have to deal with the long days and nights and weekends that this job demands. So thanks to my family for all of that. A shout out to my friends John and Tanya, who came here from Florida. I call John my best friend from high school, but that's not exactly true. We almost got into a fist fight freshman or sophomore year. We didn't talk again until literally the high school graduation. We graduated, we were walking off the football field together, and then we started talking and became friends. So I say my best friend from high school, but literally, high school had ended at that point. I want to thank a few people who are not here tonight. Memo Lyons, my journalistic mother. Mike Piggott, who is the news director who gave me my first break as a reporter. Don Carmichael, who gave me my first shot as news director. I have been blessed with a bunch of great general managers, including Marcy Daniels, who is here tonight at the 6 News table. She is joined by Sherry and the rest of my 6 News family. We've got Siobhan Klepper and Jorma Duran. They make it happen on camera. Jorma's been the morning anchor for many years, and I say the reason I sleep well at night. Dave Parks and Dan Clark are here. They made it happen. We talked about behind the scenes. They're the behind the scenes guys. And in 15 years as news director, I've had just 2 assistant news directors, Norm Stangland, who is here tonight, and Chris Pantaleo, who is not. He covered for me for a couple of weeks over the summer, and to thank him, I got him tickets to see Jack White, who is, of course, playing at the Masonic Temple in Detroit tonight as we speak. So I guess I know where I stand on his list of priorities. I would not be here tonight without any of them or the hundreds of reporters, producers, digital people, sports, weather, and teams that I've worked with over the years. And so thanks to all of them. Almost done. As for the inspiration, I just want to say that I've helped make a difference in mid-Michigan through our storytelling and through our community involvement. You don't have to be a police officer to get drugs and guns off the streets. What we do informs, what we do educates, what we do saves lives. That's why the true believers like us got into this business, and that's why I'm so proud tonight to be here and with my fellow inductees. Thank you.
Jam, where's your wife? Where's his wife? Where's his wife? Jam, where's your wife? Where's your wife? Is she here? Oh, okay. Does he sweet talk you the way he just pulled that on me? Because I don't know what kind of stopwatch you've been using, but that was not 2.5 minutes. Right. Well, you have a point there. I won't argue that. All right, our final inductee tonight is David Zeman. A gifted journalist who's had an amazing career. In nominating David, John Bebo writes, he was too humble to enjoy or accept it, but I called David Zeman Michelangelo in the newsroom. Through his distinctive editing talents, David made every story sing, no matter whether the raw copy came from interns or the most decorated reporters in Michigan. Well, congratulations, David, on earning your spot in the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame.
We're not sure why North Carolina is sending its best journalists to Michigan, but we sure are happy about it. David Zeman started his college career at the University of North Carolina before transferring to Michigan to complete his undergraduate degree. And while his first journalism job brought him back to North Carolina, a few years later, he ended up at the Detroit Free Press. Zeman spent the next 20 years at the Freep, where, as a reporter, he exposed a corrupt legal system, and as an editor, he oversaw the investigation into Kwame Kilpatrick, which ended up with the former Detroit mayor behind bars. He ended up as an editor at Bridge, Michigan, where he spent another decade growing the readership and the reporting staff. His honors abound: the Detroit SPJ's Journalist of the Year, the Michigan Press Association named Bridge Newspaper of the Year 4 times, and at the Free Press, his team won some of the most prestigious awards in journalism, including a Polk and a Pulitzer. Now, he joins the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, David Zeman.
Thank you all. My goal here tonight is to finish before I can feel Vicky rising like a hurricane behind me, which I think is like at the 3-minute mark is when she gives me the 30-second grace. I want to thank the folks involved in my nomination, including Jim Schaefer, who's here all night and now just left. Oh, there you are. Jeff Taylor and Paul Anger from the Free Press, Lester Graham from Michigan Public, and from my last home, I'm going to the home, Bridge, Michigan, Kelly House and Katie Locker, and in particular, the creative and secretive work of Ron French and John Bebo in shepherding my nomination. I truly appreciate it. I want to thank the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame, both for this honor and for getting me out of the second night of Passover. I think this was long. I want to thank my mom and dad, who read the Detroit Free Press daily, and we are often joined at the dinner table by both Huntley and Brinkley of NBC News. So how could you not become a news junkie after that childhood? It says here I should thank my wife, Lori, who somehow managed to keep everything together while building her own fabulous career while I was at the newsroom till 7, 8, 9 o'clock, particularly during the Kilpatrick saga. I want to thank my children, Jalen and Leah, who are both here, whose reverence for me grew not one whit after I received this award. Years after John Bebo, Joel Kurth, and everyone else at Bridge built Bridge, Michigan into a really enviable and sustainable news operation, I would still get texts from Jalen asking me how my little blog was holding up. I will not recount stories that I've worked on. I think you all have suffered enough tonight. But instead, I just want to acknowledge how fortunate I feel to have spent most of my career in a newsroom. I knew immediately that I had found my people, my hardworking, passionate, profane, gossipy, dysfunctional, thin-skinned people. Putting aside the shuttering of local papers, the stagnant salaries, the corporate addiction to clicks over high-quality stories, and shrinking audience numbers, there are reasons that, for all of their complaining, the vast majority of journalists say they don't regret their career choice. For me, it was the high of a great story, whether it was holding public officials accountable or beating out another paper on a scoop. I loved the rush, the competition, and the immediacy of the impact that I could make and that our newspaper could make on a community. And I found to my surprise that I got the same thrill when editing reporters as I did when it was my own byline on the story. I loved gathering at the bar after work. I loved chain smoking on deadline in my first newspaper in North Carolina. I loved being in the same office space as the stars at the Miami Herald, the Edna Buchanans and Carl Hyacins and other people, and I was just a nobody. And I became a nobody when I was at the Free Press too, but I just developed like the best, deepest relationships with dozens and dozens of people, and it was just the work of a lifetime for me. And finally, God damn it. You want to read the last one with me? And finally, I'm thankful for the trust placed in me by John Bebo and Phil Power to build and lead the newsroom at Bridge. I love all of my work colleagues, and they're just the smartest, most driven, and clever people, and I want to thank them for opening this wonderful profession to me. So thank you all.
Don't forget this. And our inductees stand. This, folks, is our 2025 class of the Michigan Journalism Hall of Fame. One more round of applause. Congratulations to you all.